Picture this. You're out cold, completely gone, mouth open, maybe snoring, totally unaware of anything happening around you. From a pure survival standpoint, you couldn't be more exposed if you tried. Now, remove the bedroom from that equation. Put yourself in a tent instead. Not a cabin, not a vehicle, a tent. A structure so thin that you can hear rain hit it like someone tapping their fingers on paper. And around that tent, forest. Real forest. The kind that has bears in it, wolves, mountain lions, animals that can smell the food you ate 6 hours ago, hear your heartbeat from across an open field, and move through complete darkness like they own it, because they do. And yet you wake up the next morning, every single time. Why? That question sounds simple. It isn't. The real answer reaches back millions of years and touches biology, evolution, fire, the mechanics of fear, and one of the strangest ecological relationships in the history of life on this planet. Let's actually dig into it. Start with something that might feel like arrogance, but is actually just zoology. You are genuinely terrifying to the animals that share the wilderness with you, not you as an individual. You personally are probably not that threatening on your own, but you as a member of the human species, to a predator's nervous system, register as something to be deeply, instinctively avoided. Researchers at UC Santa Cruz ran an experiment a few years back that demonstrated this in a way that's hard to argue with. They played recordings of human voices, regular conversations, nothing threatening, near mountain lions living in California's Santa Cruz mountains. Normal speech. And those mountain lions fled. They ran at the same rate they would run from dogs barking. In many cases, they ran faster. These are animals that routinely kill full-grown deer, animals that can haul prey up steep terrain, animals that are, by any reasonable standard, among the most efficient hunters on the continent. They heard people talking and left. It gets more striking. When researchers played those same recordings near mountain lions that were actively eating, kills they had just made, food they had worked to get, the lions abandoned the meal and walked away from the sound. Think about what that means from an energy standpoint. A predator burns enormous calories bringing down prey. Leaving a kill because someone nearby is having a conversation means the discomfort of human proximity outweighed the animal's hunger. That is not a minor reaction. That is a deeply ingrained, profoundly powerful aversion. And the mountain lion is not alone. Lions in South Africa's Kruger National Park avoid areas with consistent human activity. Tigers in India maintain wide buffers around villages, even when those villages sit inside otherwise ideal territory. Jaguars in the Amazon have shifted their movement patterns over time to route around locations where people regularly appear. None of these animals are physically incapable of engaging with humans. They are choosing not to. And that choice has been made so consistently, across so many generations, that it has essentially become part of who they are. Here's the brutal historical fact underneath all of that behavior. Humans have been hunting large predators for approximately 2 million years. 2 million. And we have been extraordinarily good at it. We drove mammoths to extinction. We erased megafauna from continent after continent. Giant ground sloths, cave bears, woolly rhinos, saber-toothed cats, species that had survived multiple ice ages simply could not survive us. In North America, we eliminated wolves across nearly the entire landmass. We pushed mountain lions out of the entire eastern half of the continent. We trapped, shot, and poisoned apex predators on every inhabited landmass on Earth for so long and so systematically that the predators alive today are the direct descendants of the ones who were most careful around us. That is not a figure of speech. That is natural selection working exactly as it does. The individuals who were aggressive toward humans, who approached camps, who tested our presence, they were killed. The individuals who kept their distance, who treated our scent as a signal to reroute, who built caution into their behavior at the species level, they survived. They reproduced. They passed that inherited wariness down through thousands of generations. So the fear you see in wild predators today isn't learned behavior in the individual. It isn't something a particular lion or wolf figured out through personal experience. It's deeper than that. It's a biological memory encoded over millennia. When a leopard catches your scent in the dark, somewhere in its nervous system, an ancient alarm activates. Not a conscious thought. Not a reasoned decision. A signal, old and reliable and wired in, that says, that thing is dangerous. Do not engage. Move on. Now let's talk about how you actually smell to something with a real nose. You probably don't think about your own scent because you're surrounded by other humans constantly, and you've completely normalized it. But consider what a predator is actually picking up when you're in its range. Bears have a sense of smell estimated to be roughly 7 times stronger than a bloodhound's. Wolves can detect scents from close to 2 miles away in the right conditions. Big cats have a specialized structure called the Jacobson's organ in the roof of their mouths that allows them to essentially taste the air and analyze chemical information at a level we can barely conceptualize. When one of these animals approaches a sleeping human in a tent, it is receiving an overwhelming flood of olfactory data. And almost none of that data matches anything in its internal library of prey animals. You smell like synthetic materials, the nylon of your tent, the polyester of your sleeping bag, the chemical residue from whatever industrial process made those things. You smell like processed food, the specific chemical signatures of whatever you ate hours ago. You smell like soap and shampoo and sunscreen and insect repellent, a layered stack of artificial compounds that has no equivalent anywhere in the natural world. Underneath all of that, you do smell like a primate. But a primate is not a deer. It's not a wildebeest. It's not a rabbit. A predator's hunting instinct is not a vague impulse to attack things that move. It's a precisely tuned biological system calibrated to specific prey animals through millions of years of coevolution. A wolf's attack response activates based on the movement patterns of ungulates. It's hunted for generations. A lion's strike mechanism is triggered by the shape, the speed, the smell of animals deeply familiar to it. You don't match any of those templates. You are, to a predator's sensory processing, an anomaly. And anomalies in the risk calculations of wild animals trigger caution rather than aggression. Fire deserves its own section because it might be the most underrated tool in human survival history. Fire produces a near-universal fear response in land animals. Not near-universal as in common. Near-universal as in almost no exceptions across almost all species. And this fear is not learned. It is not something individual animals develop through bad experiences. Laboratory-raised animals who have never been near fire in their lives, who have never seen smoke, show immediate avoidance behavior when exposed to it. The fear is that deep. It is written into the code. Animals that were afraid of fire survived wildfires by fleeing. Animals that weren't afraid of fire died in them. Over millions of years, that ruthless filter left standing only the lineages that ran from fire automatically, without thinking, without needing to evaluate the situation first. Humans discovered fire somewhere between 1 and 2 million years ago. For almost that entire span of time, sleeping next to a fire was the default. It provided warmth. It allowed cooking. But it was also, whether our ancestors consciously understood it or not, a broadcast signal into the surrounding darkness. Something here controls fire. Something dangerous is here. Approach at significant risk. Predators received that signal. They've been receiving it for so long that the message doesn't require interpretation anymore. It just activates avoidance. Automatically. Without deliberation. You should think about that the next time someone suggests skipping the campfire because it isn't strictly necessary. It is doing more work than it appears to be doing. Here is the part that movies consistently and dramatically get wrong. Predators are not reckless. The image of the apex predator as a fearless, unstoppable machine that attacks anything within range is pure fiction that exists, because it makes for compelling cinema, not because it reflects anything true about how these animals actually behave. Real predators are careful, extraordinarily careful, because they have to be. A lion doesn't have a doctor. A wolf doesn't recover from a serious injury with rest and antibiotics. In the wild, a broken leg or a damaged eye or a deep wound from prey fighting back is not an inconvenience. It is frequently a death sentence. The animal still has to hunt. It still has to compete. It has to do that while healing without medical intervention. A significant percentage of the time, injuries of that severity simply don't heal, and the animal starves. This means every decision a predator makes about whether to engage with something is a calculated risk-reward analysis. How familiar is this prey? How predictable is its behavior? How much energy will the hunt cost? What are the odds of injury? What's the caloric return if successful? A sleeping human fails that calculation in several ways. First, unfamiliarity. A predator attacking deer or impala has watched those animals hundreds of times. It knows exactly how they move, where their blind spots are, how they respond to ambush. It has no such database on humans. We might wake up screaming. We might have tools. We might have other people nearby who will respond. We might thrash in ways that create unexpected injury risk. That uncertainty, to an animal trying to minimize the chance of getting hurt, is a serious deterrent. Second, posture. Humans standing up are genuinely imposing. We're tall, upright, and our default stance, bipedal, vertical, is the same posture that gorillas adopt when they want to intimidate and bears use when they want to appear threatening. A creature that walks around in that configuration as its permanent default reads as inherently assertive to other animals. Even horizontal and asleep, the shape of a human doesn't cleanly read as prey. Third, and this is perhaps the most practical factor, why go to the trouble? A healthy predator in intact territory has access to animals it knows, prey that fits its hunting system, targets it has processed successfully hundreds of times. Going after something strange, unfamiliar, and potentially dangerous when a rabbit or an impala is available somewhere in the vicinity is simply not a rational use of resources. The math doesn't favor it. One more thing about sleeping humans that rarely comes up in these discussions. Your sleep is not as deep as you probably assume. Human sleep moves in cycles. Deep, slow-wave sleep alternates with lighter stages, including REM sleep, during which your brain is surprisingly active and remains partially responsive to the external environment. Researchers have found that during lighter sleep stages, your brain continues processing sensory input and flagging things that seem unusual. Unfamiliar sounds are more likely to break through into awareness than familiar ones. A large animal moving through brush nearby, a sudden change in the air, an unusual smell. These can pull you toward waking far faster than you might expect. Scientists call this the Sentinel function of sleep, and it is almost certainly the product of selection pressure. Our ancestors who slept too deeply, who were genuinely unreachable and unresponsive while unconscious, were more likely to not survive the night. The ones who maintained even a partial background awareness, who could go from asleep to on their feet quickly when something demanded it, were the ones who made it to morning and had children. Over hundreds of thousands of years, human sleep got calibrated to stay light enough to catch threats. You feel helpless when you're unconscious. But you're also running a low-level early warning system that evolution spent a very long time refining. There's also the group dynamic, which predators across the animal kingdom understand deeply because their prey animals also travel in groups. A wildebeest in the center of a herd is exponentially safer than one that's been isolated. A fish in the center of a school is nearly impossible to target cleanly. Predators don't simply attack prey. They hunt for separation. They probe for the individual who has fallen behind, the one who wandered from the group, the one who can be cut off from the collective response. A camp of sleeping humans is a group. When one person wakes up and makes noise, others wake up. A hunt that begins as a clean ambush can rapidly become a chaotic group defense, which is exactly the scenario predators are wired to avoid. The risk simply isn't worth it. Now, to be clear, none of this is absolute. The attacks that do happen, and they genuinely do happen, almost always follow the same pattern. Something broke the normal rules. A predator that is injured and physically incapable of taking down its usual prey. A predator that is starving because its habitat has been destroyed and its food sources have collapsed. A predator that has had so much benign contact with humans, fed by tourists, habituated to human presence, that the inherited wariness has been eroded, replaced by association of people with food rather than danger. The lions of Tsavo are the most famous case. In 1898, 2 male lions killed an estimated 35 to over 100 railway workers in Kenya over 9 months. The exact number is disputed, and the legend grew with each retelling. But what rarely gets mentioned is that these were unusual animals. Both were manless, which is atypical. One had sustained significant dental damage that made its normal prey. Large, fast ungulates, physically difficult to kill. These were not representative predators. They were predators pushed by injury and habitat pressure into hunting the only prey that was consistently available and manageable. Exceptional animals in exceptional circumstances. The Champawat tiger, responsible for an estimated 436 deaths in India and Nepal in the early 1900s, was later found by the hunter Jim Corbett to have sustained a gunshot wound that had shattered 2 of its canine teeth. It could no longer hunt effectively. It had been pushed by injury and by increasing human encroachment into hunting whatever it could actually catch. The pattern repeats across nearly every documented case of predator attacks on humans at rest. Something broke. The normal calculation changed. The inherited caution was overridden by desperation, which means the rule holds almost universally when ecosystems are intact, predators are healthy, and humans haven't done something to scramble the normal signals. Leaving food out, approaching wildlife, removing the campfire because it seemed unnecessary. Here's the part I find most extraordinary about all of this. We have been so consistently effective at making the natural world afraid of us that the fear itself has become an ecological force with consequences we didn't fully anticipate. That same UC Santa Cruz research documented not just that mountain lions avoid humans, but that this avoidance cascades through the entire food web. When mountain lions pull back from areas of human activity, the deer in those areas face less predation. Deer populations grow. Vegetation gets overgrazed. Meanwhile, medium-sized predators, coyotes, bobcats, foxes, also reduce their presence near humans, so the rodent populations they normally control start expanding unchecked. The entire system shifts. Not because we directly interacted with most of these animals, but because the fear we generated over millennia radiates outward through the food web like a signal. One species, one inherited fear, rippling across the entire living structure of an ecosystem. We changed the behavior of nearly every predator layer on the continent just by being the thing that evolution taught them to be afraid of. So when you're lying in a tent in the dark, listening to the sounds beyond the fabric, feeling that pulse of something ancient and uneasy move through you, that feeling isn't irrational. It's memory. It's the accumulated experience of every ancestor you've ever had, encoded in your nervous system, doing exactly what it was shaped to do. But the animal outside the tent isn't coming in. It's not because it can't. It's not because it doesn't sense you. It's because something deep in its biology, something built from thousands of generations of careful ancestors, the ones that survived by treating you as something to move away from, is telling it that whatever you are not worth the risk. You are, without doing anything at all, the most dangerous thing in that forest. You always have been.